I thought so. Can everybody see the agenda for today? Excellent. We have a full day today. It's allocation day. So the good news is that your committee, Allocation Committee, did a fantastic job. We had full representation, a representative from each of our 4 counties, plus Areawide President Lori Warren. So we can do a truncated version. I hope everybody had a chance to look over the packet. I know it was pretty detailed, but this is one of the things that we do that is pretty detailed. So I appreciate it. And I think we'll just give it a couple more minutes, Lori, if that's all right.
Sure.
When we do our all staff meetings, we try to ask people to log on early and just kind of replicate that, getting your coffee and catching up with folks via chat. And one of the things that we do is play music. And so Lori Smith is our resident DJ now that spins the tunes, as it were. I was just thinking to myself, we should do the same thing when we do these virtual. We should get on a little early, catch up, listen to some music.
I like it.
We have some we have a wide variety of of genres that we play. I think we did Motown last time, and it was pretty popular.
I think I played I Spy with Lori too on some other ones.
I love that. I feel a little bit like the host of the old Romper Room show, where I'm like, and I see Jeannie, and I see Barb, and I see Bambi, and I see Dan.
You're a little young for that, Matt.
It was just the just old enough. Keep trying to get my camera at the right angle. This has been the challenge of my Zoom life, is trying to figure out, especially if I'm in my home office, like how to position it, because looking up at someone is never really a good angle, and so, and so trying to position it.
Standing.
Yep. I have a very cool kind of perch that my laptop sits on at my desk at work, and I probably should get one for here. But what you guys can't see right now is that there's actually a large gaming monitor on my desk behind my laptop. So actually what you're looking at is the monitor. It's probably about 27 inches. Back before I had my daughter, I was able to play more computer games, but now it's just used for work. but if I raise my laptop any higher, I won't be able to see what I'm doing. So I think this is the best I can do. All right. So it looks like all the familiar faces are logging in. And so I think we're set when you are, Lori.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Matt. So we'll call the meeting to order for April 29th, 2022. Welcome, everybody, on this wonderful, beautiful spring day. At least we don't have any white things flying in the air. So I think we'll begin with the approval of our January minutes. So I make a motion to approve our minutes from our January meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second? I think that might have been
I second Lori if you haven't been seconded. I muted and then unmuted.
Thank you for
Mary
seconding.
Shelton.
Thanks, Mary. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you, and thank you for doing the minutes, Courtney, keeping us organized. So let's move on to county updates. Why don't we just go alphabetically, and we'll start with Portage County. The updates from Portage County.
I do know that Melissa was unable to join us today, but she did say that she's been in contact with the commissioners in Portage County ongoing about senior service levy in the county and really trying to move the concept forward, and that she had been in touch with one of the candidates for the upcoming election for commissioner, and that candidate was very responsive to the idea and very interested in talking further. Am I reflecting that right, Courtney? Okay. So that's what I know about in Portage County as it stands right now.
Okay, great. That's good news. How about Stark County?
Okay, I'll make this brief because I know there's a really full agenda, but I was able to complete the survey of the senior centers in Stark County, developed a survey instrument, and actually visited on site the 4 remaining senior centers in the county, one in Canal Fulton, one in Minerva, one in Alliance, and one in Massillon. The research shows that senior centers have a tremendous benefit to participants in terms of health outcomes and longevity and a host of other measures. But senior centers themselves have been losing members, and that was exacerbated during the pandemic. Basically, baby boomers are not interested in senior centers because they don't like the old image, and they want to do other things and, you know, play euchre and bingo and hang around with older people. They want to do things like, you know, have workouts and go on hikes and learn about technology and so on. And of the 4 senior centers I visited, some are moving in that direction and some are kind of mired in the past. 2 of them have long-term directors. 2 of them have directors hired within the last half year or so. So there has, as I say, there's been a lot of research on this, a lot of recommendations, and I'd really be interested in feeding some of this information into you know, some of the initiatives going on within the area agency for, you know, aging friendly communities and so on. I think there's lots to be done. There's the lead researcher in the country is a guy named Manoj Parasani, and he one of his recommendations is a senior center without walls that encompasses the activities seniors of varying ages, the young old to the old, that want to do as they pass through these phases. And there's implications for the bodies, you know, the civic bodies that are funding these or potentially could fund them. So in a nutshell, that's it. I'd be happy to share, you know, the actual raw data, the survey results with anyone or work with anyone who's interested in this.
Great, thanks, Stan. That's great news. I was actually on a webinar earlier this week about senior centers, and people from San Diego on there talking about their senior centers and how they're not only having to change for baby boomers, but baby boomers don't like the name of senior center.
Right.
So it's pretty interesting. There's going to be quite an evolving change, I think, coming up here pretty soon. That's interesting.
Who sponsored the webinar?
Benjamin Rose.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Was it recorded?
It was. It was, and in fact, when I should be getting a PowerPoint here pretty soon. Robert Blanco is involved with the Elder Justice Coalition, a couple of ladies from Cuyahoga County, as well as Benjamin Rose. It was pretty cool. But yes,
Okay.
it was recorded. I'll get a title and stuff too out to everybody.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Jeannie. Just a comment from my perspective as a senior. I wonder if the gyms, and they're everywhere now, are taking away from the senior centers. I belong to a gym. I spend 6 days a week there, and in the population there that I see are a lot of seniors.
That's definitely true. And Massillon has a very well experienced and responsive director. And one of the activities is to go 1 block away to the community. I forget what it's called, but Massillon has built a huge center for physical activity and so on. And they just they partner with them, and it's a great move. I'm in a hiking club, and I'd say 80% of the members of the hiking club, which is very 250 members and growing and supportive. Most of them are seniors, and they get the exercise, they get the socialization, they don't get the stigma. So
Correct.
that's the kind of thing that's working.
I saw where Barb mentioned too, libraries would also be an interesting, those folks who are not physically able to hike. Libraries is a great hub for a senior gathering.
Oh yeah, I'm in some book clubs too, and a lot of the members of the book clubs are seniors, but there are young people in them too, and seniors of all ages, some very old, some just retiring. So they're getting that intellectual stimulation and the socialization. So yeah, and I just saw Lori's note that they're partnering with the Massillon Center. One real fortuitous thing that happened too, I had contact from Interim Health about wanting to drop a substantial amount of money on a senior center that would do a breakfast for veterans. And when I went to Canal Fulton, they were planning a major annual breakfast for veterans, but had lost one of their funding sources. So got those two together, and they were both happy. And the breakfast is going to happen in about a month or so. So just, one of those lucky things.
Meant to be. That's a great thing. That's wonderful. A little bit of communication goes a long way.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Thanks, Dan. Good stuff.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. How about Summit, Jeannie?
Well, I need a clarification on something. I'm looking at a couple different minutes. The Senior Summit dates. Can you again tell me when they are? Are they, because I have a couple different.
May 13th is the conference date.
Okay. And the expo is the 14th?
The day after, right, that's Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah, if you, I don't know if Lisa Mansfield's on, but I'm pretty sure that it is on the court's website.
Okay. Okay, well, that's a big event coming up. I hope there's a great turnout. I'm encouraging as many people as I know to come down and participate. Other than that, Matt, do you have anything? Again, I'm at a kind of a loss what goes on.
No, I do. And, Jeannie, I have really, really, really great news in that Age-Friendly Summit County has just finalized the strategic plan that has been 2 years in the making. And so we presented it yesterday to the Core Advisory Committee. It's already been through review at County Executive Shapiro's office. And so we're trying to get now on County Council's schedule to be able to do a small presentation there. And then I will be coming to the Summit County representatives here in Areawide to see how we can start tethering you all into the ongoing efforts. There are 6 themed committees that have been pulled together that each have a role to play in achieving 44 action steps that have been identified. And so remember that this was from the AARP Age-Friendly Initiative. It's a 5-year process. Year 1 was the needs assessment. Year 2 was the creation of this strategic plan. And now we start year 3, where we roll up sleeves and start getting stuff done. And it's really exciting. And so once we have all those kind of things locked in, I'll make sure, Jeannie, that you and the Summit County reps here all have access to that strategic plan and the link to sign up for a committee, because we are definitely looking for advocates to serve on those committees to help us guide the achievement of these action steps that we have identified. So more to come on that, but really, really exciting news.
Great. I guess that's it, Lori.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. That is great news. Okay, let's move on to Wayne County. Have anybody from Wayne? I know last time we were still trying to work on recruiting some folks.
Hi, this is Stacy. I'm the adult protective supervisor at Job and Family, but I really don't have anything to report. But my investigator is on here as well, Jordan.
Great. Welcome, Stacy and Jordan. Awesome. Hard to tell who's here and who's not, at least from my perspective, Matt. I don't have the big gaming screen.
Well, and I can tell you that my team have been brainstorming ways that we can do some additional outreach in Wayne County. We have a couple meetings that we're working on setting with some of the community leaders in Wayne County to really start to talk about how do we help the county with their older adult services, and how can they help us at Areawide make sure that their voice is heard as well here on the council. And so I do have good news also, in that I believe, unless Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, that Ella Kick, who was the Wayne County representative serving on the Allocation Committee, has agreed to be the leader for our Wayne County portion of Areawide. And so we're meeting with her in the next couple weeks, I think, coming up to formalize all of that. But we've been without a Wayne County president for a while, so I'm happy to report that as well. That rounds out our team supreme for our leadership here. So it's good news.
Thanks, Matt.
Unless we scare her off today, I'm pretty sure she's good to go. She
Awesome.
should be on today as well. I think she's running a few minutes late. So if anyone has any questions or well wishes for Ella, hopefully she'll be on later today.
Thanks, Courtney. All right. So Matt, I guess I'll turn it over to you, since there's no more Wood County updates in regards to the agency update.
Thank you so much. And everything that I was going to cover in agency updates, I actually did in the county updates, except to tell folks that from an advocacy perspective at the federal government, we are still trying to move forward funding increases for Older Americans Act. And that's the money that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Those of you who have been serving on this committee with me for a while have always heard me say that there is much more demand than there is a supply for funding out there. And so myself and my counterparts around the state continuously talk to the elected officials in Washington and their district offices back here in Ohio to make sure that people understand just how important this funding is, and just what it means to so many people, especially during the pandemic. I got to speak with our regional representatives from Senator Sherrod Brown's office earlier this week, and made sure to tell them that, without the Older Americans Act programming that allowed us to have a system in place, we wouldn't have been able to help as many people as quickly as we did during the pandemic. And so several of you know me well enough to know that I speak in analogy. And so I went back to my car analogy and said, we already had that car built. So CARES Act funding, ARPA dollars, that just put more gas in the tank and allowed us to drive the car. we need to make sure that the wheels stay on the car because that's how it works. And so, you can't let your car fall into disrepair or else the gas doesn't get you anywhere. And so they really were, they really received that information well and said that they were going to work with their policy folks back on Capitol Hill to make sure that they were working that in as well. So more to come on that. In Ohio, we're in an odd position as a state, aren't we? So several of the folks that are running for representatives and Senate in Ohio don't really know what their districts look like. So they're still trying to figure out what's going on in Columbus. So that kind of ties up all of our advocacy efforts in Ohio in that, we have to figure out who's serving where before we can kind of start talking about policy. So what we're doing is we're going to spend the next, I would say, 6 months or so, really building up relationships, strengthening relationships with our elected officials in Ohio legislature to make sure that they understand what it is area agencies do, what the needs of the communities are as it relates to older adults, and just how important the work of folks that I look on the screen do, what we do here as far as allocations to create programming in the community, and really just keep the drumbeat up with those elected officials so that they understand when it's time to work on budgets and other policy initiatives that they have us in mind. So, and that's my agency update. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has before we move on to the meat of our agenda today. Okay. If it's all right with you, Lori, I'll just keep on going into allocation report. All right. So I did mention that we have a committee that was Lori as Areawide president, Dan as our Stark County representative, Melissa Long from Portage County, Jeannie Greco from Summit County, and Ella Kick from Wayne County served earlier this month in a Allocation Committee where we spent the better part of 2 hours together discussing what we're going to go over in a report now with everybody on the call. So when we say allocations, this is one of the fun things that Areawide gets to help us with in that we always look for public input on what we do to create the systems that are in place to fund and build out programming that comes to us from the Older Americans Act at the federal level. And so what we talk about is Title III of the Older Americans Act, and that is kind of where all the money lives. And then we play a little bit of alphabet soup with that, where we say Title IIIB is for supportive services, and that's things like home care, legal aid, transportation. We can also use it for minor home modifications, some chore work, which is just what it sounds like. We also have built out our meal programs with C dollars. That's C1 for congregate or in-person meals and C2 for home delivered meals. D as in dog is our evidence-based wellness education programming. That includes our Tai Chi Chuan, Tai Chi falls prevention, powerful tools for caregivers, and matter of balance as falls prevention, and some other good information that we provide on an ongoing basis to the community free of charge. And then also our National Family Caregiver Support Program, which is designed to care for people caring for older adults. And so those buckets is what we're going to talk about today. You'll hear me talk about some of these different areas. And I'll also ask if folks have questions as I move forward, if you could put those in the chat. And then Courtney and Tim, if you could just keep an eye on those questions as they come in, then we'll stop periodically to review and answer anything if that's okay with everybody. So I'm not going to go into as much detail as we did in the Allocation Committee, because that's why we meet in committee, is we do a lot of the heavy lifting there. And then this serves as a report out to the full area-wide on what the committee discussed and decided. The committee did move to bring these recommendations to area-wide for approval. And what that means is I'll discuss that in a little bit. So What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about this in two separate areas. The first is what we call our traditional Title III network, which is the money that we allocate out to providers. And then those providers find their clients, set up their programming, deliver their services, keep any waiting lists that they would need to keep, and basically run their own programming with oversight from area agencies on aging. And so the other side of what we do is a person-centered approach to allocating, which we call care coordination. Many of you on the call are familiar with the care coordination program. That's the program that we have at Direction Home that replicates passport or Medicaid waiver services, that ties a care manager to a care plan and funding to provide services for people in the community who otherwise would potentially need nursing home placement. So it helps keep people at home. And the nice thing about that is the person doesn't have to go to where the money might be. The person comes to Direction Home, and then Direction Home can allocate different resources for that person, all kind of focused with them in the middle. And so what we do is we have kind of a best of both worlds where we allocate some of the money out to fund providers that are doing excellent work in the community. And then we also can provide person-centered approaches to the provision of service. So I'll pause here and see if there's any questions so far. And what I would like to do is, as your representatives on the Allocation Committee, if any of the, there's Ella. So if any of the representatives from the Allocation Committee have any comments or suggestions, questions, or any points of clarification you would like me to make, just feel free to let me know. And I can do that so that we can just make sure we're closing the loop for everybody here on the screen. So the process that we use for reviewing these recommendations is pretty in-depth. We first start with Areawide Allocation Committee, as I mentioned, and then we have the Areawide Council Public Meeting, which is today, right now. And then after this meeting, the recommendations and edits will be collated and then will be presented to the Community Engagement Committee of the Board of Directors at Direction Home, and that'll be next week. And then those recommendations will be edited and revised. And then the final recommendations will go to the board of directors for approval in June. So that's kind of the whole process. And this also ties together with the Ohio Department of Aging's area planning process. And those of you who have been with me for a while on the screen know that our area planning process is a required process that we have with the Ohio Department of Aging, where we go through a pretty in-depth, I would say, as I look at my friend Brandy on the screen, who's who is training to take the area planning process over. It's a pretty in-depth process, and what we do is we align what we see as strategic initiatives with their planning process to come up with action steps, goals, strategies that align with what we hear from you as important, what we hear from other stakeholders as important, and then move things forward. So just a little bit about the process. And Mr. Martin, if I miss anything or you have anything to add, please just let me know. The process that we start with this whole allocations is we put out a request for proposals that went out in, I believe, late December, early January of late 2021. And that request for proposal is to build out that traditional network of providers, as well as to find to create a roster of providers that we fund for care coordination services. Those providers submitted their proposals and their requests for funds, which you're going to see on the slides that we go over. As I mentioned, the demand far exceeds the available funds that we have. One of the first ones that I always see on my list is PARTA, and so Portage County Transportation, and I think one year it was $300,000 they requested, and we only had 120 for everybody. So we definitely have much more requests than we do the ability to fund. But what we do is we take what we have and then we try to use it as judiciously as possible. And the way that we do that is to review all these requests for proposals, and then run it through a scoring process that allows us to compare apples to apples with the providers, so that if and when we do have new providers or additional funds that we can allocate, we have a way to build staff recommendations around that allocation and then work through that process I discussed on the previous slide to make sure that it's vetted with the public. We get your feedback, and then we can move things forward. I will stop and kind of give you my view as what I see as kind of the staff interpretation of what we're seeing. First off is, it's not going to surprise anybody that there is a workforce shortage going on out there, and that has not skipped over the home care and healthcare areas of service provision. In fact, home health aides, the people that go into the home and provide the services that we're talking about, were in short supply before the pandemic. And so this new wave of workforce shortage has exacerbated an already bad problem to the point that I am now calling it a crisis. And I don't use that term lightly, but it is a crisis at this point that we really need to address. One of the things that we've done that worked for us really well in the last allocation cycle 2 years ago that we have continued to apply is to accept most providers in the care coordination bid process, if not all of them. I believe we've accepted all of them this year, to make sure that we have as many providers as possible in the pool of potential service provision. And the reason why we do that is because we don't have enough providers to staff cases. Right now, we are functioning at about 25% of our care coordination clients who are currently waiting for a home health aide to staff their case. So we are trying to do everything we can to provide as many providers as possible for those people. The way that we do that and still meet the needs of the competitive bid process through the federal government is we have redefined the way that we define competition by the point at which the case or the service plan is accepted. And so providers compete to take these cases based on their ability to staff them. And so that's how we define competition now. We do feel like this process is expanding the pool of providers. We do have more providers this year to bring to you than we did the previous cycle. I will add the caveat, though, that more provider agencies does not mean more aides in homes providing baths and help with toileting and things like that. So, Tim, anything to add on the allocation RFP process or the competitive bid stuff?
Yeah, as a point of comparison, the way we used to do the competition was have the providers bid against each other to get the contracts. And what that ended up doing was driving down the rates. And then providers couldn't make any money. And then we had difficulty having providers in the program. So this change of the definition of competition eliminates that downward trend in the rate setting.
Thank you, sir. Yes, it was always a race to the bottom, and that's not what we want now, because what would happen is providers would try to come in at the lowest bid possible, but then they weren't able to recruit and retain talent at that rate. So we definitely are trying to flesh out more processes to bring more providers online to staff more cases. Thanks, Tim. Also, we noticed that there is a lack of social work counseling RFPs response. We had no social work counseling responses for the RFP this year. And the second bullet point was that realistic provider capacity as bid. That's what Tim was referring to is that bullet point of we really ask the providers to create realistic bids and rates and then submit those for our review today, because it does no one any good if they come in at too low a cost and then we can't provide the service. So what we'll do first is we'll just click through the different areas of allocation, starting with the traditional provider network. Remember, these are the providers out there that responded to the request for proposal. Requests were reviewed by staff, scored, and then we use that to create these staff recommendations that we're going to go through today. Just a point of clarification as well, in that when we make these decisions and bring these forward, there's a couple assumptions that we make. And the first one is that we try to hold harmless the providers that we're currently working with. And what that means is, if at all possible, we try to at least keep the current providers whole in their allocation so that they don't have cut funding if we can help it. If they're what we call a good provider, which means if they're running a tight program, that they meet all the requirements from the state, and that they are earning all of their money by providing the service that they've bid to provide, then we work with that assumption that we won't cut their funding, because that would mean that they would need to stop serving someone that is currently receiving services. So that was one of the things that we kind of make sure that that's kind of top of mind for these allocations. So this is what the sheets are going to look like. And like I said, this was all, we spent a lot of time reviewing this in committee, and then they've moved this to Areawide for this review today. So what I did is just kind of clarified each of the services. What you're looking at now is adult day service. And I fibbed to you, this is actually the care coordination creation of the panel first. So we have adult day services. And what I can tell you by my analysis is that we do have full coverage in all 4 counties, and that the proposed rates, we are moving, staff recommends that we accept these rates as presented so that we can build out the most robust provider network possible. And you'll see that ongoing. Next up is the chore. And that is what you'll see here, is that they're all actually $1. And what that means is that each chore job is spec'd up so that we get a bill, we get an estimate, and then we can allocate those funds to achieve the chore job. So if it's things like helping to clean out a hoarder's apartment, we would have a chore service that would go in, would say, this is going to cost $550. We would be able to then go back to one of these providers and say, would you be able to help us for this amount? That's why it says it's a $1 chore bid rate, because it's just dollar for dollar for the amount that we pay for. All counties are covered again in the chore providers. Next up is the emergency response systems. Again, all 4 counties covered, all rates proposed to be accepted so that we have the most folks to pick from as possible. After that, we have home delivered meal providers. Again, all 4 counties covered, with the rates proposed falling in line there. You can see on column H. The minor home modifications is the same as chore, and that's the services that we provide on an as needed basis for the funding that we have to do everything from wheelchair ramp installation, widening of doors for people who are newly in wheelchairs, trying to make sure that homes meet the needs of the person as they age. All 4 counties covered again. Next up is medical transportation, all 4 counties covered. So we have a network that is meeting the needs of all 4 counties. And again, that's a dollar for dollar rate that you see there. This is smaller, and I apologize for that. But what you're looking at now is the homemaking service. Homemaking is just what it sounds like. It's like house cleaning. It does not move into the personal care area, which is what we're going to talk about next. Personal care being hands-on assistance with things like bathing, dressing, toileting, feeding someone, things like that. This is more of the like house cleaning. All 4 counties are covered. So we do recommend that these rates be accepted. And then here, this last slide is the personal care rates. Again, all 4 counties covered. We have more providers here than we did previously, I believe. So we are making advances in recruiting additional providers. We hope that this new system will allow them to provide the service at a rate that will allow them to recruit and retain talent to be able to provide the service. So overall, I would say that staff's happy with the care coordination response that we had, and that we weren't really surprised with any of the bid responses, and that after discussion at the Allocation Committee, we felt like this was a good panel to move forward.
Matt, can I interrupt?
Yes.
Did I miss transportation?
Yeah, transportation is delivery, ERS, chore, ADS, transportation. Bambi, I don't know that we do I don't think we did transportation for care coordination. That's the traditional one. We haven't gotten there.
My mistake. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions on any of the care coordination recommendations? All right, and I do see a question from Brenda about getting involved with Direction Home. Brenda, I'll ask that if you could provide an email or a phone number to Courtney Flickinger. We will link up with you and present all the different opportunities that we have for folks to get involved. So I'm going to continue on. If there are any questions or comments, please put those in the chat. And committee, if there's anything I missed that you'd like to bring up, please let me know. Moving on to the traditional Title III network allocations. This is, again, the block grant style of allocation where we have that request for funding and then we allocate out the amounts. We do have a policy that we use that's been approved by the Ohio Department of Aging, as well as a funding formula that provides funding to each county based on the population of said county, and then taking into account specific priority populations such as people over 85, people living in rural areas, minorities, and there's several others that we take into account as far as allocation of resources. Again, the assumptions that we use include the federal award remains consistent with the last year, the last cycle, that we make sure that these recommended allocations go to providers who can earn the amount that they're requesting, and that we keep providers in good standing with their previous amount if possible, if they did bid that. Just a little bit of a staff analysis. Here's what we saw in these traditional responses. And this is not new. This has been this way since I've been doing this work, in that congregate meal providers in Wayne County did not request the amount of money that we have to allocate in Wayne County. That's the only time when I would say that the supply outdoes the demand in that regard. And so what we've done to make sure that Wayne County is made whole as far as meals go is we actually over allocate the home delivered meals in Wayne County, because we have to under allocate the congregate meals. And then that is converse on the other three counties. We over allocate their congregate meals and under allocate so we can make Wayne County whole in the home delivered meals section. So overall, everybody is getting what they're supposed to be getting in meal provision. I mentioned our staff is working to develop plans for outreach in Wayne County, and we have been working with Melissa Long in Portage County as well, to try to build up the services, especially meal delivery in those counties. And that the caregiver support program, that Title III program, will integrate a community-based provider in Summit County while developing processes to supplement service provision in the other counties. And what that means is our caregiver support program has certain portions of it that are designed to be done by the community, and some that Direction Home provides. So the difference there is support groups, training, and counseling, as far as the law is interpreted, is designed to be allocated out into the community. We did not receive a request for proposal back for all 4 counties for caregiver support. We are working with a provider, though, to try to identify what options they would be willing to take for us so that we can have a rounded out service. The reason I bring this up is because Direction Home is responsible for making sure that this service is provided. And so if there is no community-based provider that wants to provide that service, then we fill out a waiver with the Ohio Department of Aging and then submit that so that we then can provide that service. All right, just checking the chat to make sure there's no questions. Moving on, you'll see this is what the traditional allocations looks like, and this is Bambi. This is the transportation one. So you'll see Portage here. Column D is what was requested. The recommended amount is over here in column N. So if you follow along, D, Portage County requested over $31,000. We had 13 to allocate. And so you can kind of move down the list. Summit County requested 126,000. We had 25 and some dollars, thousand to allocate. 86 in Stark, over 25, and then 64 over 11 in Wayne. So what we did is we just tried to hold the providers that are currently providing services harmless, as far as we don't want to cut those services. So we are requesting to hold folks as much as possible to where they were previously. Next up is our home modification chore provider. Again, this is one of the things that we do with Summit County. Here is a $20,000 allocation request, and we have a $10,000 allocation that goes out to them. I do want to mention, though, that there is home modification services going on. I'm looking at Tammy, and Tammy Fillingame is our expert home modification guru, and she really works hard to pull together all sorts of different funding sources to fix homes. And right now we are waiting on our final award from the Ohio Department of Community Development. I think I said that right, Tammy. So Ohio Community Development. And then we also are using some other funds like the ARPA COVID support funds to fix up houses. And then we're also working with some of the municipalities that have funds out there through ARPA to say, hey, these are one-time funds. What better way to do that than to fix up some of the housing stock that's falling apart in the community? So more to come on that. Community legal aid. This is an interesting one in that this provider serves all 4 counties without turning anyone away. And so we have allocated out the funds available that we have for legal aid to this provider. Next up is our congregate meal allocation. And this is where you'll see some of the differences down here in Wayne County. Total available is $90,000. And then the allocated is 22. And then just to show you the difference here is when you move to home delivered meals, you'll see that we have quote unquote 217,000 that's supposed to be allocated, and it's actually allocated at 248. So we did make Wayne County whole as far as meals go, and we've made the other counties whole on the reverse. One thing to bring up is that congregate meal sites have been slow to reopen after the pandemic, and so we do have the ability to transfer funds from the congregate setting to home delivered meals as needed to a certain amount. And so we do anticipate having to do that movement. But for right now, what we like to do is allocate it, in a perfect world. And then should we have to make those mid-course corrections, we can do so. But again, you'll see that all counties are covered with this provider, this service, and that we have held providers that were in good standing, already serving folks as harmless as possible. Same thing with home delivered meals. All 4 counties represented, holding folks, to previous allocations if possible, where they've requested it. And you can just kind of go through, like I said, column D versus column O here is what was requested versus what we had to allocate and what we're recommending. So next up is caregiver support. This shows Vantage Aging as the provider that was interested in doing caregiver training in Summit County. They have been in touch with us afterwards to say that they would be willing to consider expanding to additional counties for that service, but we are discussing that with them now. So as it stands right now, I am moving forward with the reality that I have in front of me, which is this bid that we're going to recommend allocating out to them for the county that they'd like to provide the education in. And then we'll ask for the waiver to provide other things. And then we'll work with Vantage Aging to get an allocation that works for everybody to provide the most amount of services possible. And I just saw Tim nod, which I always take that as an A. So because Tim's been doing this longer than I have. So if Tim's nodding and happy, then I'm happy. So thank you, Mr. Martin. And so that is the traditional allocation for the network that we have. We did not receive any Title III-D health education responses to our request for proposals. So we will need to write and submit a waiver to the Ohio Department of Aging to be able to provide those services. That's what Lori Smith does for us, is to provide those trainings. And so we will continue to do that after we apply for and get the waiver, hopefully. We do have some cool new stuff going on with that too, where we've been able to provide small stipends for people that are host sites for trainings, and also small stipends for trainers that would be willing to volunteer for us and provide those. And then again, as I mentioned, writing a waiver for the Title III-E caregiver support provision for the counties and the programming that was not bid in the response for bids that we have. And I always feel like I have to stop and at least I can see people to make sure that everybody's still with me. I did a webinar before the pandemic, and it was just me and a PowerPoint and a telephone. And after 20 minutes, you just had this overwhelming feeling that you were just talking to yourself and the phone had cut out 15 minutes ago. So at least I can see folks. I'm seeing nods, I'm seeing smiles, I'm seeing okay. So I will stop here and we can open it up for dialogue. I'd welcome any additional comments from the committee. Like I said, we went into much more detail at the committee level to move this forward to you all. And I feel overall, I will say I feel very strongly that this is a good allocation recommendation. I anticipate that we will be able to provide more programming than just this through our ARPA dollars. Those are the COVID support dollars that we have to spend between now and 2026. So more to come on that too. So overall, this is the best place to be in that we could be in, I feel like, and I'm pretty positive. I have a very rosy outlook on the future as far as the provision of service using these allocations.
This is Stacy from Wayne County. I just had a question. I saw that Salvation Army was receiving money for congregate meals. So is that like open? Because I know that they serve lunch. So that's for anybody, right? There's no like age, like, 60 and above or whatever.
So for our funding, yeah, it's a 60 plus population. But for folks like Salvation Army, what they do is there's a new term called blending and braiding funds. And so that's what they do is they will have multiple different funding sources to provide one service. And then depending on who qualifies for what is how they cost out those meals. So if Salvation Army, does that make sense? Should I say that right? Okay.
Yeah, so they can only bill for you if it's 60 and older.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Good question. Lori, was there anything else that you felt like I should cover as far as the allocations go before we move on to calling for it?
No, but I will concur your deep breath after you did go through it, because I've been doing it for a couple of years too, not probably as long as Tim. And I always want to take a couple of deep breaths after we get through these, each time you talk about them. And thank you guys at Brickton Home for your efforts. Wow, it's always a huge job, and I'm amazed at how it kind of all shakes out as we get along to all these committees. So I just want to thank you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know the staff do as well. This is a lot. This is a lot. And, you know, we did it this year while also doing all of the COVID support. And so it was kind of like many of you on the screen can relate. We've had two jobs for a long time now, in that we've had our kind of traditional job that we had, and then we have our COVID support job. And so that was also something that we were bringing alongside of this allocation process. All right, Lori, I will turn it back over to you then.
Okay, anybody else have anything for the group? Any other announcements anybody wants to make before we kind of wrap things up a bit?
Just one minor point that could save time in the long run after this meeting even is, you know, since this motion would be coming from a subcommittee and it hasn't been changed, you're guaranteed there's more than one member who approves it. So a motion like this does not require a second.
Thank you, Dean.
You are the Roberts Rule expert. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. All right, so can we, we'll make a motion here to approve the allocations. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Great. I think that was an aye. Great. Thanks. So all moved. Great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. And then Lori, just to remind the group that we have our next meeting, we are hoping to do in person. So stay tuned. But I do hope that you know, Courtney and I can work our magic and maybe even get back to Hartville Kitchen. So don't hold me to it, but we might be doing this over pie in a couple months. So we'll let everybody know so you can plan accordingly. I will say though, for those folks who are joining us from farther away, I will be making the Zoom link available and we will do as best we can. I've never seen a hybrid meeting go 100% according to plan, and so we'll do our very best, but I do want to provide that option for folks that aren't able to join us in person.
Look forward to that. Nice to see people in person. Anything else, Matt, before we wrap it up here?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So personally, I was very encouraged by the county updates. How cool. We are moving and shaking out there and doing some pretty cool stuff. I'm anxious to hear what goes on down there in Stark County, Dan, with the senior centers. And when I hear something from Benjamin Rose, I will shoot it out to Courtney so she can share that with everybody. It was a pretty cool webinar.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I want to remind everybody about the Senior Summit, May 13th and 14th. Lisa put a link, I believe, in the chat. If not, you can always get on the court website, Summit County Probate Court, and hook up that way. Wayne County, I know you said Ella is on. We talked about Ella when she wasn't on, but we're glad to have Ella aboard. And I think that's all I have as far as wrap-ups go. Appreciate everybody taking the time today. And again, hopefully in July, you can work your magic and we can have some pie. And just to be able to meet people in person would be awesome. All right, so thanks everybody for what you did. Can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion.
Second?
Second, Mary Shelton.
Thanks, Mary. She sounds so far away.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everybody. Thanks again, Matt. Thanks for leading us through all that.